So we're live. This is the fifth building in public session that Arthera has started pretty much over a month ago. So me, Stefan, co-founder, and David here, a dedicated contributor. We're gonna host this session um, talking about mostly David. We'll talk about hardening the server of your validator on Arthera. We started to showcase how to uh, start your validator on Arthera last week. David has showcased this thing last week, and to this week, we're gonna go through, let's say, uh, basic stuff on how to secure your server. So
Yeah.
let's go deep dive on this. I'll let David take the
Uh,
lead on this, and yeah, David,
th
thank you
Thanks,
for
Stefan, and good evening, everybody. We're not quite going to do a deep dive on it. That's a subject that takes days. But we are going to have a look at how we set up a minimum standard for basically for security, where connections from the outside that we don't know are pretty much more or less all blocked, and how if somebody tries to brute force their way into the server, how to get them kicked off. That's kind of the two minimum levels of security we want to implement on either a validator server or an RPC node server later on. And it's not as frightening as it sounds. So let's see. Is my screen sharing? Oops. Is my screen coming up for everybody, Stefan?
not for now, but
Ah, it is
oh,
now.
nice,
Excellent.
great.
Excellent. Good. Okay. So, security best practices, setting up a minimum level of security on your server. And after you either install a validator or RPC server, the next step is setting up the level of security you feel comfortable with. The standards in this guide are for the minimum recommended level of operational security to ensure best possible uptime on Ubuntu 20 and newer. And yes, we also support Ubuntu 20 now, as we have Dockerized releases of the validator client. So to get started with, we want to, first of all, make sure that our system is updated and upgraded. This is kind of the starting point before you start installing new software. As with Linux, you may otherwise end up breaking some things. This server is hosted with Contabo. We're running upgrades on it. Shouldn't take very long. We've got it saying automatically yes. That's what the .y switch here does. It says automatically yes to everything. And we should be done inside the next 2 to 3 minutes. It's very important to do this at the start before you start installing fresh software, because Linux is not like Windows. Linux, everything is done in bits and pieces along the way, and if you don't have all the bits and pieces in to a certain standard, sometimes you will find software behaving in a strange fashion. Not normally something like UFW, but it can happen, and you can get odd errors that take an awfully long time to troubleshoot. So doing this as a standard before you start is basically what you want to do. So, oops, this is taking slightly longer than expected, but that's all right. Once this process is done, we're going to reboot the server to make sure that everything is fresh and we are sitting there working with a nice clean system. Hopefully today it's a bit easier for you to follow along, as I figured out how to increase the font size in Putty. Something I've been doing this for so many years now without ever experimenting with this before, which is rather silly. I've always just been sitting there staring at Courier 10 point, but this is 18 point and should be quite a bit more readable for everybody. So the reboot command. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second while I go and get the IP for the server.
Okay. While you do that, I'm just gonna tell everyone that everything that we're gonna go through, and they can go to docs.arthera.com, .net, and under the validator, they can find everything documented there under the validator tab.
Yeah. And we should be live again now. So let me turn my sharing back on again. Let's see if it's coming through. Yep, here we go. So that was our reboot now. We are inside Putty. We are going to go here to, hold on, keyboard. Where was it? Font, yes. Changing the font, we'll change it from Courier New, 10 point, and we'll change it to 18 point. Then we'll open the server, log in as, that's not rot, but root. And password is in, we're rebooted. And let's get to work on installing uncomplicated firewall. And that's literally what it's called, UFW.
Nice.
So sudo apt install UFW. If you're on Fedora or one of the other operating systems, you'll need to use a yum command. Oh, okay. I'd already installed it. No, can't have. It's okay. It's installed. So now that we've gotten it installed, we want to check and see if we have IPv6 turned on. Now, for some of you, that may sound slightly odd, like why do I have to check if IPv6 is turned on? And yes, it is turned on. You can see that here. You need to check it because on different versions, it will not always turn on automatically. Why do we need to check this? Basically, if we disable it, uncomplicated firewall will drop all IPv6 connections to the machine. And that means that large parts of the internet will be unable to connect to it, which puts you at the back of the transactions queue for getting new transactions in for validation. IPv6 is faster than IPv4 where you can get it supported on the network. So if you do have it, almost all hosting providers have it nowadays, but there are still regions, particularly in North America, where it's not supported. So if you're in one of those areas, check again and again. Make sure it's there. We've saved and closed the file. Make sure it's switched on, or you lose basically connections. That will affect your epoch score negatively. So let's see. Let's set up some policies here. We've got two policies we want to set up by default. So we want to take basically block incoming connections by default. So we've denied incoming connections. We want to allow outgoing by default. Now, if you are on a machine on your home connection where you're accessing the machine by your keyboard, you need to make a choice. If you're on a machine that you host and have physical access to, then you want to deny SSH access. That means no remote logging in, no FTP from the machine, no anything like that. But since we're working on a remote server, I want to allow SSH. And now, in order for these rules I've set up to take effect, I want to start by disabling my firewall. And then I want to enable it again. That means that the rules I just put into effect are now live. So we've got something missing though. Our validator needs to be able to talk to the rest of the Arthera network. So take sudo ufw allow, and 6534 is the networking port for Arthera. So we will allow that. Now we need to repeat step 5 to make sure that that new rule is taken into effect. And we want to check that it's running correctly. So we can see we have 22, allows for TCP, 22 allows for TCP on IPv6, 6534 is allowing incoming. But it's not saying that it's allowing TCP or UDP. However, if it's allowing both, so we can scroll back here, and then we can add TCP. We can add, oops, UDP to that. Then we can start again. Disable the firewall. Scroll back through our commands. This is done with the arrow keys. So yes. Then we want to check that it's all there. Yeah, we have TCP connections, UDP connections, and connections in general.
Nice.
It will talk to the network. It's really quite straightforward. And you now have a server that will allow you to SSH in, and it will allow the Arthera daemon to talk to the network, but it won't allow any other traffic at all. Depending on what other services you may be running on the server, that may or may not be a problem. If you're using it for RPC or for other things as well, you need to make sure that you allow the right ports. But as you can see, opening and closing a port is very straightforward. It's simple, easy to do. If you refer to the documentation here, it shouldn't really be a problem. So now we come to the next point, which is making sure that nobody can just brute force their way into our server. So, oops. apt get install failed to ban. Yes, I want to continue. Good. We're done there. Very, very simple. This will switch the location to where the file is located. And we should now be able to just go nano jail local. Oops. No, we're not. Oops. Do I not have CPT installed? CP installed here. Hold on. We want to enter this directory, the etc. failed to ban and jail local. So we want to check where we are now. We want to get out into the root, see where we are. Yeah. Hold on. That's the root directory of the server. CD. Okay. I have something on here I've forgotten about. Hold on a second. Am I using the right server for this? Yeah, this should be the right server. Yeah. So once again, let me just see here. Oh, I put in a double string, didn't I? Not a direct. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, good. So here we are. I need to change a line in the documentation. I'm getting old. So under the default section here, I want to check what we've got under default, and we want to say read all these lines. We've got what's called jails, and these jails are explained here in our documentation. We can set it to ignore IPs. For example, if you're connecting from your own home computer, if you've got a static IP, you can set it to ignore it if you forget the password. in case your cat is playing on the keyboard or something like that. We can set up ban time, which in this case is set to 1 hour. So we could comment this. Instead of setting it to 1 hour, we can ban for 2 hours. Good. That was our ban time. Got ban time increments. We can adjust all kinds of things for the ban time. Basically, this is configured by default to start banning if somebody has 3 or more failures on a login and password combination. So ban time is the number of seconds that a host is banned. Here it says 10 minutes. Let's not just give them 10 minutes. Let's give them 100. Find time. Find time is basically inside how much time you can have your maximum number of retries, and you can have how many failures. So the higher we set this, the harsher it is. So let's set this to 120 minutes. It's currently set to max retries 5. I would set that down to 3. Max matches. Those are the only settings we need to worry about to start with. And I was in too much of a hurry to start with, so I uncommented this. I will put the comment back in. So we found the sections we need to find. Found the ban time, we found the find time, we found the max number of retries, the max number of matches, yeah. Control X, save the modified buffer, yes. Good. It's now saved, and we need to check that it's working. Oh no, we need to restart it first of all to make sure it's working. And let's see what IP tables has to say. This server has been running for quite some time, so let's see. Yeah. I have another piece of software running on this, which quite a few people have been trying to hack their way into. So you can see these have been bumped off the server. This may look like a lot and may look like it's not. There are so many servers running automated probing scripts and things like that, that if you don't have something like fail to ban installed, your service will automatically degrade over time. It'll start slowing your server down with the number of login attempts that you get. And yeah, we can see it's working, and I will change that one line in the documentation. Basically, this is now a server where feel free to try to hack your way in. Unless you have the 0-day exploit, you're not going to get in. So, yeah.
So this is an open invite, right?
Yeah, this is an open invite. It's very simple, unless there is a 0-day somewhere in one of the in TCP or IP or stuff like that. There have been exploits like those. One of the things I cut my teeth on was quite a few years ago, Ruby timing attacks on remote desktop protocol authentication. There's always a way to get in, and somebody's always got it. But using that kind of technique is not worth it. To just stop a validator because there are no coins on the validator, you can't. The only thing you can do is cost the validator money by shutting it down. That's the worst amount of damage you can do. And I mean, that doesn't really gain anybody anything. It's much worse, for example, if we were talking about RPC nodes, because if enough RPC nodes get shut down, then the network starts having trouble relaying transactions and that kind of stuff. One or two validators don't matter greatly in the overall scheme of things. Any questions from anybody in the audience?
So for now, I don't see any question.
No. Okay. I
regarding-
will also tell you the mistake I'd made. I'd forgotten that I'd actually removed the root user from the file structure. That's one of the things I normally do as standard for my own personal setups. It is, however, not a recommended thing to do if you have to have multiple people sharing access to the same machine, as it's good to have a common point of reference for where do we go to be in boss mode on the computer.
Okay, yeah. So now that we went through everything that you've documented, just to make a short recap of what you did, all of what you've done is just a basic.
This is the bare minimum, basically.
Yeah.
This is not going to keep out a professional, determined hacker, but it will keep out all of the scripts that a lot of hackers have running to find and pick on easy targets of opportunity. And if you're running, for example, Dockerized validators or Dockerized RPC servers, and you're using stuff like NPM to manage their deployment, it's incredibly important to get something like this onto the machine, get it set up with it, make sure it's up to date, because there are, with languages like Node, that get updated more frequently than the rest of us change our underwear.
Mm-hmm.
No, but literally, they have multiple daily updates on their development streams. For example, Node.js. Um, you have to have something like this because they, on a monthly basis, fix at least one or two critical level exploits.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily ever get exploited, and you've got to really be following things and looking at what you're doing. For example, what's a good example of a critical? Um, year, no, when was that? 2021, November 2021, there was an exploit in Apache. Apache makes the software, the TCP and UDP software that basically most of the internet runs on.
Mm-hmm.
There was a small exploit in them combined with Node, and all of a sudden, a lot of very young, very inexperienced people were taking control of some very big, very powerful epic CPUs and mining crypto with them.
So this would be the bare minimum to not be uh, vulnerable.
Vulnerable to automatic tools.
Yeah,
You can always be vulnerable. You will always be vulnerable
of course.
to, unless you switch to using something like Red Hat or OpenSUSE. OpenSUSE, however, are not really up to date on the latest Linux kernels. They've been slacking off a bit, unfortunately. But Red Hat, Fedora are good alternatives. FreeBSD, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but getting binaries, etc., to run on FreeBSD can be a bit of pain. Um, but for those who like it and like to work with it, they're good solutions as well.
Um, if we don't have any questions, live questions right now, I would have a question for you, David.
Yeah,
So this session was focused on the minimum basic of
yeah,
securing your
yeah.
server.
I
Uh,
mean, the next level up from here is for firewalls, looking at something like IP tables, doing all
okay,
your management via IP tables.
that was
However,
okay.
that's a very
That was the
complicated
question.
subject.
That was the question. If you would give any leads uh,
Um,
for entities that would like to go forward with this, what would you suggest
I
to
mean,
go on
if you want to go much further than this, you really need to be a fairly professional systems operator,
further?
or systems administrator, and then something like IP tables. And it also depends on the hosting solution you're using, what you actually
That
can
also,
make work. So it's the advanced field is really very big, very broad. This is sort of what you use if you are, let's say, an early stage investor who wants to run a validator or an RPC node in order to support the network you're investing in. Then you would do something like this, or you would hire a node operating service
Mhm.
to basically run the node for you and ensure that it's completely online. But in most cases, they actually just do what I've mentioned here.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Thanks. So,
Yep.
this was the today's session. I hope
Um,
you enjoyed, and if you have anything to add or ask, or anything at all, please
we've got
let us know.
one later session coming on expanding this topic slightly,
Okay.
um, with basically changing SSH ports and maybe using VNC with some kind of desktop environment on a remote machine instead of just using putty and console like we've done here.
Okay.
Um, that's sort of an extra step you can take instead of blocking off SSH access to a server completely. You could move it to a hard to find port,
Okay.
to a port not normally associated with SSH. If somebody is listening, however, to all the traffic coming in and out from the IP, they will still be able to find it. But again, with most exploits not really being exploits, but some kind of combination of automated tools, like scanning scripts, combined with a little bit of phishing, some social engineering, that kind of stuff, in order to get a vague idea of what it is you're trying to hack your way into, then it's definitely worth doing, because you will cut out many of the automated tools. Many of the automated tools will not look at the full port range. Many
Right.
of the automated suites like Kali and Burp, you need to know how to configure them to look at the whole port range instead of just firing it off on the standard ports.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of it's an improvement, but if it's an advanced improvement or another basic improvement, I'm not really sure. It's debatable.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
So wrapping this up, I think this is pretty much of what you can do as the list of
Yeah.
securing your node, right?
Yeah.
So
It,
everyone, if you can go, if you're watching this, you can also go on the doc.arthera.net to see the written documentation, so you can have it in parallel with this session, live session.
or also feel free to ping me in one of the Artera support channels.
Or this, of course, we encourage this to have live support on that. Uh, so feel free to ask us anything on the Telegram channel or in the YouTube messaging option. Um, we're gonna follow on that on every message you give us. So I think uh, we're
Yeah.
thanking you that you watched the live session or the recording, of course. I thank David for um, showing us everything, and pretty much see you next time, next week on the live session.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, David, for your
Yeah.
time and for
Thank you.
your shared knowledge. And
Yeah.
see you on next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank
It
you.
was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on,
Of
Stefan.
course. Anytime.
And yeah, good stuff.
Great. Thank you. See you. Bye.
Yeah, bye.